Deep snowy forests, snow-capped mountains and glittering fjords. Winter in Norway. For many, the most beautiful time of the year.
As soon as they start running, they get quiet. The dogs, they love it here.
The Nordland Railway, one of Scandinavia's most spectacular train routes. From Trondheim to Bodo. Right through the white wilderness.
There is real winter here, a very long and icy winter.
Bitterly cold and enchantingly beautiful.
This is the best playground in the world. The kids love it here.
700 kilometres right through the Norwegian winter towards the Arctic Circle. Trondheim, Norway's third largest city, is located at the mouth of the river Nidelv. The old warehouses date back to the time when the people of Trondheim became rich from fish and wood. The Nidaros Cathedral is the symbol of the city and is considered a national shrine. Until 1217, Trondheim was the seat of the king and therefore the capital of Norway. Every morning at just past 7, the Nordland barn arrives at the main station. Not a train like any other, but a railway with a legendary reputation and an eventful history. He's the boss on board, conductor Øystein Lillegård. The train is scheduled to leave in 10 minutes. Until then, he has to check the train.
What I'm doing now, I'm turning on the electricity, the heating, unlocking the doors, inspecting the toilets, seeing if the emergency alarm works, all part of the job.
Everything's fine inside. Now, conductor Øystein has to check the connection between the wagons and the locomotive.
The whole train gets its power from the locomotive. There's 1,000 volts on there, and the compressed air also comes through here for the brakes. I'm going to check those again too.
The 61-year-old has accompanied the trip to Bodo hundreds of times and has learned one thing: thoroughness is important, especially in winter.
We run diesel locomotives here. It's always possible that the engine or something else breaks down on the way. But the biggest problem on the track are the moose. Unfortunately, we're always running over some of them.
Øystein won't know if everything went well on this trip until tonight. The train will be travelling for almost 10 hours. It will leave at 7:38. The Nordland Railway's route to Bodo is exactly 729 kilometres long. The single track line leads from Trondheim in a northerly direction, then branches off into the mountains, crosses the polar circle on the Saltfjellet, and ends in Bodø on the North Sea. In the north of Norway, the winter often lasts from October to April. Temperatures of minus 30 degrees are not unusual, especially in the mountains. Linda Marie Aarstrand loves this winter up here in the Susendal area, at the foot of Bjørnar. The 37-year-old grew up here. Shoveling the daily snow has become routine. And she's not alone up here. 17 Huskies keep her company. She wants to go on tour with them.
All year round, the weather here is actually the big challenge. Sometimes there is a lot of fresh snow, and then it rains again. You always have to adjust to that.
Before she can start, Linda has to feed the animals first. She studied farming, then lived in New Zealand for a long time. But when the longing for home became too great, Linda returned. She took over her parents' farm together with a herd of cattle, but her passion belongs to the dogs. They get a mixture of dry food, meat and vegetables. Linda's friends have known the Huskies for a long time. The Huskies are friendly and affectionate animals that get along well with people.
In the beginning, they are completely out of control. You have to be careful that they don't get tangled up in the line or bite through it. That's why you must never let the dogs out of your sight. You have to make sure you get going quickly.
The lead dogs determine the speed. Huskies can run up to 40 kilometres per hour. Linda's taking it a bit easier today. The temperature is only just below 0 degrees.
It's quite warm today, so the dogs want to stop and roll around in the snow and eat some. At these temperatures, they struggle with the excess heat that they give off via their tongues and paws. Then everything goes much slower. But at minus 20 degrees, they run like clockwork.
The little socks do not protect against the cold, rather they're intended to prevent the dogs from injuring their paws. We continue through the wilderness of Bjørnar. The Huskies need exercise every day. Linda is outside with them no matter what the weather is like. After 2 hours, time for lunch. But the planned lunch has to be caught first. Somewhere under the thick layer of ice, the fish are cavorting.
Mats, you can put your rod in here now. Whenever I've been away for a while, I'm always really glad to come back home to Susendal. And by that, I don't mean the house where I grew up and now live, but it's the area here, the farm and everything around it. I love this place.
No food for me today.
Even after half an hour, no fish in sight. Ice fishing does not only require patience and time, you also need a bit of luck. But of course there is a plan B, and it's called grilled sausages. And if you prefer vegetarian food, you can simply flambe a cheese sandwich.
It's just the freedom you feel out here. You live with the weather in the here and now. You no longer think about paying bills tomorrow or cleaning the apartment. When you're outside, you switch to another mode, and it becomes cozy. It's like meditation.
Lunch break in Norway, at 0 degrees outside temperature. And then it goes on through the white winter landscape. The Huskies, at least, are far from tired. The Nordland barn has left the first 150 kilometres behind it. Passing fjords and lakes, it continues north. Many waters are frozen over until spring. Conductor Øystein at the ticket control. Many Norwegians take the train to get to work. It's too unsafe on the roads, especially in winter. The train prices are affordable. A trip from Trondheim to Bodo is available for 25 euros. Marianne Grue works as a cleaner. She gets to work with the morning train and the evening train back home. She travels with the Nordland barn almost daily.
And? Going to Snorre as usual?
Yes.
Thanks. Have a nice trip.
She's hardly ever late with the train.
The train is extremely important for me. If the train didn't exist, I'd have to move to Snorre and could only be at home on weekends. I tried that once, but it wasn't for me.
She has a lot of time for knitting, her favourite hobby. Driving would not be an alternative for her. Marianne doesn't have a driving licence. Øystein is not only the conductor, but also provides information about the sights along the route.
Here you can see the former anchorage of the German warship Tirpitz. From 1942 onwards, she lay here in the bay and was attacked several times by the British Air Force.
The Second World War and the occupation of Norway by German troops. They too are part of the history of this railway line. But the places where the tracks can still be seen today are further north. After almost 3 hours, Snorre is in sight. The small village is located at the northern end of Snøsvatnet, a long-stretched lake. Marianne works at the town hall. That is directly opposite the train station, so she's almost at her destination. Arrival in Snorre. As almost always, the Nordland barn is on time. Just 2,000 people live in this region, widely scattered over more than 2,000 square kilometres. Contact with the outside world is provided here, at the post office in Snorre, the workplace of Trond Smørstad. He's a country postman and delivers letters, parcels or the daily newspaper to 600 households every day. Not that easy in snow and ice.
I have to drive carefully today because the roads are very slippery, so I really have to be careful. But otherwise everything's okay. The weather could be worse.
Almost 200 kilometres lie ahead of Trond. He's got just under 6 hours to do it. If he gets through all right, he will visit a former colleague during his lunch break. He used to be a dairy farmer. He used to work on his parents' farm nearby. There were hardly any holidays. The animals had to be looked after daily. So 8 years ago, Trond decided to switch to the post office.
The best thing about this job is that it's so varied. I drive, then I put the mail in the mailboxes. And the most important thing is, I get to walk in this beautiful nature, meet lots of nice people. And when my shift is finished, I have real time off and can relax until the next day.
Trond's schedule is tight. The farms along his route are miles apart, so he doesn't have to drive to each house individually. There are collective mailboxes. That saves time. They're all over the country, all over Norway. It's coming up to noon. Trond's right on schedule. Enough for a quick trip to see his former colleague. Bjørg Vedal has worked at the post office for almost 50 years. She retired 10 years ago and used the time to make a name for herself by baking waffles.
My grandchildren often come over after school. They always get something to eat from me. My old aunt once said, "You never do anything wrong by inviting someone for dinner."
In Norway, waffles are actually eaten with cream and jam, but there are also exotic varieties.
In Fredrikstad, in the south of Norway, there is a tradition of wedging a pølse between the waffles. So grilled sausages with waffles. You can get them at the football stadium. It's very special.
Bjørg is 77 years old and lives out here all alone. She doesn't mind the winter.
We have good stoves here, lots of wood and warm clothes, and we go out a lot.
Trond has to go out into the winter now, but in a warm car. More than 100 letters are still awaiting delivery. The rolling postman is the reliable link to the outside world in the middle of the Norwegian winter. The dining car is now in full swing. Stig Voterdal is the master of coffee, grilled sausages and cinnamon rolls.
All it takes is a little skill and common sense to do the job here. You have to be responsive to people. Sometimes some people are in a bad mood, dissatisfied. These things happen. But in the end, we all depend on each other. After all, you're pretty much alone here on the railroad tracks. It's important that everything works. The train, and especially the kitchen.
The dining car is the heart of the railway. Siv and Knut Nielsen are on their way home. The two come from a visit to their daughter and grandchildren in Trondheim.
In winter especially, it can be slippery on the roads. It's great to be on the train. You can drink coffee, look out the window and talk.
The Nordland barn starts climbing up into the mountains. On average, the train only reaches 70 kilometres per hour. The travelling, comfortable and leisurely. The next destination is Namskogen. Railway kilometre 290. Here, embedded in the mountains, there's a unique zoo. 35 different wild animals which are native to Norway live in a 50-hectare enclosure. Many are threatened with extinction, for example the lynx. Feeding time is at 1 p.m. Animal keeper Ann-Karin Steinkjer brings lunch. The two lynx ladies, Brunhild and Kjerstin, eat about 2 kilos of meat a day. Although Ann-Karin knows the animals, she keeps her distance.
I'm not afraid, but you must always pay attention to the body language of the animals. With some of them, we don't go in alone, like the bears or the wolves. There are always 2 or 3 of us. Even the moose can get pretty agitated. We must be careful.
After the lynxes, we now move on to the next enclosure. Finn and Sisten live here, 2 polar foxes. The park's been their home for 12 years now. Only about 200 specimens remain in the wild in Norway. Ann-Karin is back at the feed lot, organising supplies. The animals need 17 kilos of food per day. The park is financed by entrance fees and donations. Moose also live here. At noon, they're all hungry. The animals all know the sound of Karin's scooter, even the otter. Nyla is also waiting in the wolverine enclosure. But the food doesn't just come out of a bucket. Ann-Karin has come up with something special. The meat is pulled up on a self-built cable car.
Well done. Great.
Lunch at lofty heights.
The animals should work to get their food so that they don't get bored. This is our concept. In the wild, after all, they're chasing their prey, and here it should be similar. But we always have to come up with something new so that the animals keep having fun.
The wolverine's scientific name, gulo gulo, comes from the Latin word gulo, which means glutton.
I get to be outside all the time in this beautiful weather, but the best thing is the animals. I love animals. This work is just perfect for me.
The wolverines are full. Now it's time for hares, goats, and wild boar. If you walk through the forests of Norway, you will not meet a single person for days. The country is sparsely populated. In the early afternoon, conductor Øystein will focus on the topic of cleanliness. This includes inspecting the train. Saying thank you for coffee cups and old newspapers, a matter of course for Øystein. And if there's no one, he just cleans up himself. Besides, he has to contact the next station.
We have no passengers getting off at Majavatn.
Norwegian Railways is proud of its reliability. Almost 90% of the trains arrive on time, and if something does happen, they are, of course, prepared.
Then we'll take care of the onward transportation first, if that's still possible. If nothing else is possible, the most important thing is to stay warm on the train. We always have emergency rations on board. We can then prepare food in case the train has to stop for several hours.
Fortunately, there are no further snowfalls announced for today. There is also a children's compartment on the Nordland Bahn. Marta Altehøy is on her way home with her daughters. The children love the rolling playground.
We were visiting my sister. With the two children and my mother, the train is the most comfortable way to travel. Then they can play all the time. It's just convenient.
Just over an hour to Mosjøen. Hidden inside the Vistenfjord is Aursletta, a small collection of houses. No railway track and no road leads here. The village can only be reached by boat. To live away from civilization. That is exactly what Kaia Aarstrand yearned for, back when she still lived in Trondheim. Her husband is from this area, and so they moved here 6 years ago with their 4 children.
In summer we get lots of tourists here, but in winter it is wonderful. You're really alone here. Then you find an inner peace you can't find anywhere else.
People lived near the fjords more than 7,000 years ago. In the woods, you can still find rock paintings from that time. Kaia works as a teacher in the kindergarten of her children, 3 days a week. On 2 days, the kindergarten is closed. Then Kaia and her 2 sons have time off and stay at home.
This is the best playground in the world. The children love being here in winter with all the ice. This is really a very special place to play.
The water. The frozen bay. Life on the fjord is not without danger, but Kaia wants to teach the children to take care of themselves and learn how far out onto the ice they can venture. Around 3:30, the ferry is approaching. It only calls at Aursletta twice a day in winter. The Norwegian government is willing to pay a little extra to ensure that places like this can be reached all year round. Otherwise, the area would be deserted. The arrival of the ferry is a small event every time, especially when Father Bjørnar and the 2 older siblings come home. Bjørnar works as a social worker at the municipality. Only when the fjord is completely frozen does everything stop here. Then there is no school, no work, no kindergarten and no shopping. Then the Aarstrands are really cut off from the rest of the world. They have enough space in their new house, which they built themselves. Carl is 12, Anton is 9. They want to go fishing. Without parents, but with life jackets. Start the engine, no problem. And they've learned long ago what to look for out on the fjord. It has begun to thaw. Now in late winter the sun is already warming. Nevertheless, the wood stove is still in operation almost every day. Kaia, Bjørnar and their children miss nothing out here, neither cinema, restaurants nor friends. On the contrary, they enjoy life in the silence and nature by the fjord. And with 4 children, there's always enough life in the house.
When I come home after work and the ship has left again, the whole family sits down at the table. It'll be like a vacation.
Family life on a lonely fjord can be simply wonderful. The next stop is Trondheim, railway kilometre 367, which is almost exactly half of the distance. Conductor Øystein has discovered a passenger with excess baggage. He has worked for the Norwegian State Railways for more than 40 years. Most of the time he's here on the Nordland Railway between Trondheim and Bodo.
Tog 471 avgang.
We always check to see if there's any problems. Then we help out. This case here must have weighed 50 or 60 kilos. It weighs a lot.
With peanuts and a pleasant 23 degrees in the car, the journey continues. It's still almost 200 kilometres to the Arctic Circle. Lunch break for conductor Øystein. A coffee is always on. Norwegians are among the leaders in coffee consumption in Europe. Actually, he wanted to become a chemical engineer, but then he applied for a job at the railway company and he got it. He's proud of that. His grandfathers helped build the line.
We have great freedom here and this phenomenal view from our office all day long. We travel, get to see Norway and talk to the people on board. That's wonderful. One day everything goes well and the next day there are many problems to solve. That's the challenge here.
The Nordland Railway has left Trofors. The single-track line leads first through the mountains. At kilometre 406 in Mo I Rana, it will reach the sea again. The Vistenfjord. The area is not necessarily known for its fine cuisine, rather for its many old wooden houses, but behind their facades there is much to discover. For example, Per Theodor Thoresen. He is a cook for Arctic cuisine and organises a big food festival in Mosjøen every year. Tonight, he's invited friends. There is reindeer.
In the past, Norwegian home cooking had to satisfy the appetite above all. There was good food and plenty of it. And traditionally, fish was served, quite often.
Its ingredients are hand-picked and, whenever possible, regional. Good reindeer meat is available almost everywhere, but for other ingredients, he has to accept long distances. The Setesdal farm, a real insider tip. At first sight, the farm does not show that you can get good fish here, of all places. Here inside, there is one of the few breeding facilities for Arctic char. Knut Kasnes has developed a special tank for his fish that is as close as possible to their natural habitat.
This is a flow-through facility. The fish swim and move in flowing water. This gives them a very good, firm flesh.
Per has chosen 3 large chars. He thinks that farmed fish can certainly compete with their wild counterparts. It is important to him to know what he's serving his guests.
I can choose exactly the size of the fish here. I can talk to Knut about anything, ask him anything. He knows how old the fish is. In a shop, you can never be sure. Here, I know where the fish comes from. At the grocer's, I sometimes have no idea how old the fish is. But for me, it's important.
In the barn next door, Knut's second passion, goats. 90 animals belong to the farm. In summer, they eat fresh grass on the pasture. In the winter, they get the hay from the Norwegian summer meadows. Knut comes from Mosjøen. In 1980, the biologist bought the farm and moved out of the city. and into the wilderness.
We're Norwegians. We were born up here and are used to this climate. For us, it's no problem. We've moved here because we like the winter and like being outside.
Knut's goats produce around 250 litres of milk a day. The Kastnes mainly produce cheese from it. Per has to go back to the restaurant. The only thing missing is the cheese specialty of the house, coffee cheese, another typical specialty here in the Arctic latitudes. For Per, it's the car back to Mo I Rana. He uses long journeys to come up with new recipes because here in the solitude, he has time to think.
Food is something very universal. It brings people together. Everyone has to eat. Whether it's dinner with the family or a big event. It's always about culture, about taste. Food is a language, a way of communicating.
Back at his restaurant. First, the chars. Per needs them for the appetizer. He's going to whip up 3 courses today. He has 4 hours before the guests arrive.
Good ingredients are simply the be-all and end-all. When I cook, I usually combine traditional Norwegian dishes with new ideas.
The reindeer back is ready. Together with the juniper branch, it's put into the charcoal oven once more. This gives the meat its very special aroma. And another trick, a piece of coal.
This is smoked sour cream. I simply took the charcoal out of the fire and put it in the cream, giving it a natural smoky flavour.
7 p.m. The guests are there. There's only one big table here, all very exclusive. Per's friends are already expectant. The chef has come up with something very special again. A dollop of smoked cream and the char on top. Pickled green strawberries and sliced cucumber. The Arctic starter is ready.
Nordic cooking has become really popular in the last decade. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that you associate Scandinavia and the North with the pure, genuine and natural. Moreover, top restaurants like Noma in Copenhagen have received a lot of attention. Word has also got around to normal people.
The reindeer back now comes from the charcoal grill and is then served in fine slices. Served with finely diced reindeer heart, Brussels sprouts, beetroot and onions. For dessert it gets exotic. Cream ice cream with seaweed and cream of porcini mushrooms topped with cloudberries. They grow here too.
I think I did all right. What do you think?
The Nordland Railway is also slowly reaching Mo I Rana. Conductor Øystein has packed his things. This is the last stop for him. For this group, however, the journey in Mosjøen is just beginning. Trine, Trine-Lise, Anna, Grete, Lisa and Katarina are all related to each other and members of a women's band. Conductor Øystein helps people get off one last time. The 6 musicians tour the villages every winter. Today they're going back home. There, the final concert of the tour takes place. At the track, handing over to colleague Roger Fick. Øystein has now finished work and will take the next train back to Trondheim. The band's short concert tour lasted 7 days. Everything by train.
The weather and road conditions are bad. The roads are slippery. We don't like driving. So the train is perfect. It's much more relaxing and much safer. Sometimes they even close the road in the mountains. But the train always runs, actually.
The sisters and cousins all have the surname Bang. It's the one that gave them their unusual band name, Bitchy Big Boobies Bang Band.
It is just fantastic when we are on tour. Everyone is in a good mood. We have time off and are away from our family and home. We feel free when we're on the move.
There is hardly any time to make yourself comfortable. After 50 minutes, the Bangs have almost reached their destination. Hemnesberget, the hometown of the musicians. Only 1,300 inhabitants live in the small town. But at least there is a famous jazz club where the women's band will perform tonight. The Helgeland coast, very close to Hemnesberget, is a paradise for kayakers. The 3 friends, Vegard, Marta and Alexander, want to go out to sea today. They had to wait a long time for this day. The weather was just too bad for a paddle tour. But today, no storm, no high waves, perfect conditions.
The weather is lovely. It's been bad for so long. Now we're looking forward to getting out on the water.
The Helgeland coast, with its approximately 12,000 large and small islands, its long sandy beaches and the almost turquoise sea, is a particularly beautiful part of Norway, even in winter.
It is fantastic every time to come back to the same area and experience it under new weather conditions in different light. That's when you realize you're really alive.
In everyday life, the 3 teachers are the headmistress, principal and geologist. They got to know each other during their studies. In front of them lies the island Hestmanøy, through which the Arctic Circle runs.
The kayak is so quiet that you can get very close to the animals. You can see birds at close range, or, if you're lucky, a whale. I've already experienced that. This fills body and soul with an incredible peace.
Around 3, it's time to set up camp for the night. Camping at -2 degrees. A warming fire should not be long in coming. A kettle for coffee is always there. But the most important thing is, and remains, the grilled sausages.
You feel like a little boy exploring every day. The world out here is always new. I love that. Here in Norway, we have so much nature and very few people. This gives you more opportunities to get away from it all and be alone, or with just a few people.
No mobile phone reception, no rush, just the sound of the sea.
You get energy back. You can switch off from everyday life and do something completely different. Nice friends, good weather and beautiful nature. It's an unbeatable combination.
A cup of coffee from an open fire to go with it. It's simple things that make you happy in Norway. For the bitchy Big Boobies Bang Band, however, the evening is just beginning. The final concert in Hemnesberget tonight is the last concert of their tour and a home game.
We all know who's coming. That's nice. It makes us feel safe. We talk a lot between the songs. Here we don't have to be afraid of what we say, because this is our home.
The concert is sold out.
Little boxes on the hillside, little boxes made of ticky-tacky, little boxes on the hillside, little boxes all the same. There's a green one and a pink one and a blue one and a yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky and they all look just the same.
The Nordland barn is approaching the polar circle, railway kilometre 543. Last stop before the magic line. At Trendelag, the trains from North and South meet. At 700 metres, we climb up to Saltfjellet. And then we've arrived. the Arctic Circle, highlight of the journey. The winter on Saltfjellet is unpredictable. Sometimes it comes already at the end of September, sometimes it lasts until June. Also last night it snowed again. The snow ploughs on the European Road 6, the most important north-south connection in the country, are in continuous use. Driver Tormod Schøning has been driving on the icy roads for 10 years. The section of road he has to clear of ice is 33 kilometres long, and it snows every day.
There's more snow up here than anywhere else. You never really know what the weather's going to be like, and there's always a strong wind. The snow is always moving, so we often have to close the road here. That's what's special about Saltfjellet.
In the past, the Saltfjellet was impassable for cars in winter. The pass was closed. It's only since 1968 that there's a manned snowplough station up here on the mountain. One week on, 1 week off. Here at the station, Tormod and the other drivers stay overnight during their shifts. After all, they have to keep an eye on the situation on the roads around the clock.
If the weather suddenly changes, the pass road must be closed. This will have real consequences for the people, the entrepreneurs, for everyone who wants to cross the Saltfjellet. You have to think about what you're doing every time. It's a big responsibility. We can't close too soon, and we have to keep the road open as long as we can justify it.
Another coffee for the road, then it's back out on the street. For Tormod, the job is the fulfillment of a childhood dream. Snowplough driver at the Arctic Circle. He says it's not the most common job in the world. But it's not a job without danger. Tormod checks his equipment before every trip.
Unfortunately, the reindeer are the ones causing us the most problems. During the winter, many are run over by cars and trucks on the road here.
Several snowploughs are in use here on Saltfjellet around the clock. The road conditions are difficult today. Lots of fresh snow, including bare ice. Several times a day, Tormod crosses the Arctic Circle. And passes the Arctic Circle Centre for Arctic visitors. For many tourists, the Saltfjellet is treacherous.
It often happens that people get into trouble when they drive up here in Saltfjellet. So we have to help them. No matter what the weather is like, it can be quite uncomfortable when you have to get out in a strong storm.
At 4:30, we're going back to the depot. Tormod's shift is over then. After 11 hours in the narrow cab, skis and poles are waiting for him.
It's a Norwegian phenomenon. We just like to be out in nature a lot, all year round. Every season has its charm. Movement is very important for me because I have to sit a lot, so it's very good if I can exercise after work.
Statisk jobb mye hva det gjør, og det veldig bra å få beveget litt på armer og bein.
And Tormod can do that here until May. Enjoy the white wilderness at the top of the Arctic Circle. The Saltfjellet, for many it is the highlight of the train journey. The Russian violinist Kaia Aarstrand is on her way home.
I'm going to Bodo. From Bodo I have a flight to Oslo and then to Moscow and to Arkhangelsk, to my homeland. It's a very long way. Yeah. Of course I like this country, I like this nature. I come here every time and I return with full of emotions.
Two of the most beautiful paths to the north meet on Saltfjellet, the Nordland Railway and the E6, or European Autobahn 6. For thousands of years, Saltfjellet has also been the land of the Sami and grazing ground for thousands of reindeer. The Sami used to live in cotton, conical tents made of birch trunks covered with reindeer skins or peat. Nina Oskal is a Sami and also speaks the language. She wants to preserve the heritage of her ancestors and today shows tourists the traditional Sami homes.
Den här har min mamma byggt.
My mother built this peat hut. She herself was born in one, so she always wanted a home like this.
Efter det här, sån här boende för att, ja säkert, mimra om barndomsminnen.
Probably because she had such fond memories of her childhood. I want my children to learn what my mother and father taught me. That is important, otherwise it'll all disappear.
Det är min uppgift att lära mina barn. Annars försvinner den.
Her three adult daughters have made their own way, working as a fashion designer, voiceover speaker and makeup artist. They support their parents in every free minute. Nina's 17-year-old son, Ante, will one day take over the reindeer. Everyday life has become easier compared to how it used to be. The snowmobile has long since replaced the dog sled. But Nina and her husband still have to look after the animals every day, in any weather. You don't ask how many reindeer a Sami owns. It would be like asking how much money someone has in his account. Reindeer husbandry is an ancient tradition that has been passed down from generation to generation. It was the same with Per Ola and Nina.
The reindeer mean everything to us. Without reindeer, we would be normal Norwegians. That's just the way it would be. We would have no language, no culture, no food, nothing. Our way of life would simply disappear.
And with them, the huge reindeer herds. Up to 100,000 Sami still live in Scandinavia today, most of them in Norway. But economic interests increasingly collide with the traditional life of the indigenous people.
Modern society wants more and more land. Our pasture land is shrinking from year to year. It's an unfortunate fact. That's how it is. New holiday cottages, new roads, new pits, new power plants, all have to be built, no matter what. The community demands more and more.
Whether summer or winter, the reindeer usually roam free. Only when they are fed, tagged or slaughtered do the breeders herd them together in an enclosure. For thousands of years, the Sami culture has been an established part of northern Scandinavia and parts of Russia. But how long will it continue to exist? Nina and Per-Ola are not so sure. Climate change is changing nature and the lives of animals. In addition, there are very specific problems with traffic.
We are losing hundreds of reindeer and have been for many years. They get run over by cars and trains. It's not good for the drivers or us or the animals.
The Norwegian state now pays between 200 and 400 euros in compensation for each animal run over, a sum that Per-Ola and Nina find too small, but it is a start. And there is another new idea for the protection of animals, but Per-Ola has to catch one of the lead animals first.
In this collar is a small GPS transmitter. When the leaders and their herd approach the road, warning lights are activated and flash. This is to make sure that the drivers slow down.
The digital collars are still part of a research project, but they may one day help to better protect Sami reindeer. But the collar does not offer protection against train traffic. A fence along the track would probably be best, but that's far too expensive. The Nordland Railway arrives punctually at Lonsdal station, 602 kilometres from Trondheim. Until 1955, the railway ended here in Lonsdal, exactly 19 kilometres north of the polar circle. All of those who wanted to continue their journey and were waiting for connections stayed overnight at the legendary Saltfjellet Hotel. Torbjørn Fjeltun is a hotelier, caretaker and hostel warden in one. Guests have registered for this afternoon. It should be cosy and warm in the hotel. After all, it is icy outside. Minus 20 degrees.
This is real winter here, a long winter, and a very cold winter. Minus 30 degrees is nothing unusual. Of course, you have to dress really warmly. We use a lot of wood because the building is old and not very well insulated.
The Saltfjellet Hotel was built in 1950. At that time, Lånsdal was the place for winter sports, but the golden times are long gone. Torbjørn and his wife Sissel spend their 5th winter in a row here. They hope that the 4 guests will actually make it to them.
In the last few days, the road to the mountains was closed and the guests who wanted to drive by car did not come. These are things you can't do anything about anymore. Of course, there's often bad weather up here. After all, we live here in the middle of nature and are dependent on it. You have to learn to deal with it. This is an old building. There's always something to do.
The charm of the 1950s has remained. Old photos remind us of the heyday of the hotel. Nordland Railway Station as a traffic junction. Those who came from the south had to take the bus from here to the north. Those who came from the north had to change from the bus to the train here. Railway romance in black and white. But there was also construction in winter. The Saltfjellet Hotel was then considered to be ultra-modern and was the pride of a whole region. Sissel used to come here as a kid. For her, the hotel is a piece of memory.
My grandfather used to have a small cottage about 10 minutes from the hotel. I used to come here often in my childhood and buy chocolate at the reception. Or I used to go to the toilet here, so I wouldn't have to go to our outhouse. Besides, I worked here when I was 18. I had a summer job at the reception.
The couple has fulfilled a dream in the mountains with the Saltfjellet Hotel in Lånsdal. .3:43. The Nordland barn slowly picks up speed again and leaves the station. This is where the last leg of the journey begins. In a large curve along the Fjord, down to the North Sea, to Bodo. Knitting is the latest trend in Norway. In hardly any other country is as much wool consumed per inhabitant as here. Kirsten Sand is on the way north with her son Bjørnar.
In the past, you just didn't buy so much. You made a lot yourself, even the clothes. I've wanted a sweater like this for 60 years. I asked my friends from sports if they could knit one for me. That's how I got it. I like it a lot.
It looks more like Iceland or Shetland.
No, it's actually Sami colours.
But the pattern comes from Iceland, doesn't it?
No, Greenland.
Oh, right, Greenland.
Whether Iceland, Greenland or Norway, nature inspires them again and again.
Look how beautiful it is.
It's so quiet and peaceful here. When you come here, you notice it. It's a different kind of peace.
There's no stress here. The stress of a big city, you don't have that here. You get calm. You can't be stressed at all. When you travel from A to B, why should that stress you out? It's hectic in the city, kids, work, it's just the way it is.
Maintaining train service in ice and snow, a technical masterpiece. But the challenge of building a railway line at all was much greater due to the mountainous landscape. Here, the dark chapter of the Nordland Railway is kept awake in the Bloodway Museum. Finn Rønnebu works as curator in the museum. From 1940 to 45, the Germans occupied Norway. Prisoners of war, mainly from Eastern Europe, had to build a 140-kilometre-long railway line at that time.
On the whole, the prisoners lacked everything. There was torture, death. It was commonplace in those days. Today, we know that during the construction of the track, an average of 2 people were killed each day, or simply collapsed from exhaustion and illness.
Without regard for the health of the prisoners, the German occupying forces wanted to build a polar railway, Hitler's prestige project, all the way up to Kirkenes. The German defeat prevented this. There were 56 prison camps along the route at that time.
It's important to preserve such a significant part of our history. The museum has various functions. It should tell about the past and show younger generations what happened, in the hope that nothing like this will ever happen again.
A reminder and a memorial. The Nordland Bahn is now approaching the finish line at top speed. The foothills of the North Sea have long been reached. The train still has half an hour's journey to Bodo, always along the coast. He's in no hurry to arrive. Jake Kress Barabat is visiting Scandinavia for the first time in his life.
I am going to Bodo in the north, far north. I am actually on a trip right now. Yeah, I'm from Philippines originally. It's really amazing. This is the first time I saw snow. After I landed in Oslo, this was the best trip I had. The train was definitely awesome and comfortable.
For conductor Roger Fick and his colleagues from the dining car, the journey is also slowly coming to an end. The islands and the sea are now very close. The coast of Norway is wide to the north. The canyons of the fjords are not as deep and narrow as further south, and the climate is relatively mild. On a peninsula lies Kjerringøy, which translates as Old Woman's Island. They build wooden boats here, which have their origin in their name. the Northland boats. Ulf Bjørnar Mikkelsen knows his trade. Together with his apprentice, Stephanie Hein, he builds 6 to 7 boats a year. The Vikings designed the Nordland boats, perfect for easy rowing and sailing. There are only a few companies left that build boats like this nowadays.
When I was a kid, I used to go to my parents' hometown by the coast every summer. There was an old Nordland boat, just as big as this one, all black from the old tar, which had cracked and was quite brittle. But I was still too small, and I wasn't allowed to use it. It wasn't until I was 12 that my old uncle said, "OK, if you can pull the boat into the water, and you can take responsibility for your brothers and sisters, then you may use the boat."
The initial interest has now turned into a profession. A Nordland boat is between 5 and 13 metres long. It's made of spruce wood, which Ulf fetches specially from central Norway. It takes a good 4 weeks to build such a boat, which then usually goes to museums. Stephanie comes from Plough. She has already completed an apprenticeship as a boat builder. Her search for a shipyard for wooden boats ended with her moving to Cherringøy.
It has always been a dream of mine to move to Norway. Well, I learnt boat building in Germany, and I've always been fascinated by wood. It's just hard to find a wooden boatyard down in Germany. That's why I searched up here for wooden boat building. You find more wood than plastic here.
Building wooden boats, a craft that hardly anyone in this region masters as well as Ulf. But finding good youngsters was not so easy.
I must admit, I was a little sceptical at first. I thought she would come here, stay for a while, and then leave. But Steffi is capable, she learns quickly, and is very interested in the craft. She has a work ethic that you rarely find among young Norwegian people, unfortunately. Most of them are more occupied with their mobile phones than with carpentry.
Right next to the shipyard is the old village centre at Cherringøy, a fishing village that had its heyday in the 19th century. Knud Hamsun, one of the most famous Norwegian poets, has a special connection to the place. Some of his novels were filmed here. Knud borrowed money from the merchant of Cherringøy when he was short of money. The old merchant's shop still displays pieces of jewellery from back then. The fishermen used to stock up on food here, but mostly with high-proof stuff. The bill was then written down and later settled with fresh fish from the Lofoten. The historic boats are stored in the old boat shed next door. All of them have the typical curved shape, which even stops high waves.
This here is an old-type Nordland boat. It was used as a fishing boat, but also as a church boat. People used to live far apart, sometimes in the farthest corner of a fjord. They would take the boat to church or to the merchant.
You rowed the Nordland boats or hoisted a sail on the mast. Only later were engines installed. Boats are still an important means of transport today because many places on the coast can only be reached from the water. For Stephanie, it's the practical part of her training, so to speak. She is to set sail today, for the first time, completely without help, under the strict eyes of her teacher. Not so easy, but then it works out after all.
It's fun. I'm always afraid that I'm doing something wrong, or that I won't get it right, or that I'm not fast enough. But mostly, if you get too hectic, that's when things go wrong.
The fishermen used to sail the boats over to Lofoten, that's around 100 kilometres over the open sea. But today the wind just doesn't want to freshen up, and it's getting dark. But next summer they want to take a longer tour, and Ulf has this idea.
Steffi will have finished her training in 3 years. Then she'll know how to sail a boat like this and how to build it to get the properties you want. If she likes, she can take over my business, and I can retire.
Stephanie doesn't know yet whether she'll accept this offer, but on this winter's day there's nothing more beautiful for her than the world of fjords north of the Arctic Circle. The Nordland Bahn has now reached its destination, Bodo, after 729 kilometres and 27 stations. The train took 9 hours and 50 minutes and therefore arrived more than punctually. Roger's last mission, to say goodbye to the passengers. Ha det bra. In English, take care.
We'll take a break first for around 2.5 hours. Then the locomotive will come to the front again, and this will become the night train to Trondheim. I have to work to Mo I Rana, and then I'm finished.
Jake moves on with his photographic equipment as well. Maybe he'll get lucky and see one last aurora. The journey with the Nordland Bahn ends in Bodo, but tomorrow morning another train will start heading north, right on time, at 7:38 a.m. Then, a new winter journey to the Arctic Circle begins.